Hey guys, welcome back to the Kaiyo cast. It is episode 39. We have Ronin here. Welcome. How is your day going today?
My day is going. It's going okay.
Yeah.
As odd as it sounds, I've had to actually help with a friend's funeral, and try to try to sort out what the logistics need to be done that way. But other
Yeah.
than that, things
I
are going
mean,
okay.
yeah, it's crazy, like in general, like life just kind of happens, like shit, like thing, like,
Hmm.
like every year since 2020, we gotta mention this, like every year just kind of has been starting off in complete shambles for some reason. Like, it's been crazy,
Hmm.
but like we've been getting by. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And that that's the key, is to really just say, hey, life is happening, and when you can, squeeze as much as you can with it.
Yeah, yeah.
Know that it's all part of the plan.
And some things are not in the plan, you gotta like plan accordingly and try to at least, and like, you just gotta kind of just go with things, but like everything just kind of doesn't like
Yeah.
go the way you expect it to all the time because so much things are
Oh
unexpected.
yeah. No, that's true, because, like, quite frankly, again, you have to deal with life, and then you have to deal with, kind of your plans and your goals. And I always kind of say that life may change your plans, but not your dreams.
True.
So, like, that's
Always hold
that's
on
a
to them.
really,
That's a
yeah,
good
absolutely.
sense.
So, in any case, that's kind of my thing going forward. Never give up on the dreams, or dreaming for that matter.
Yeah, I feel like goals are always really good to have, just generally. Like, if you're not working towards something, if you don't have dreams or goals, what do you kind of like? What's your job opportunity? Like, what are you doing? It's the overarching, like, questions and things of like, what are you doing with your life? What are you working towards? What do you want? Like, it's
Hmm.
purpose is a very crazy overarching thing that everyone thinks about that like you kind of have to figure out like as you go and as you want to do things.
Oh, that's right. But, don't be afraid to also, like, dream as well, and at times leave those dreams behind in order to pursue other ones. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
know that sometimes saying no means a deeper yes.
And literally, as the saying go, like literally, like doors close and new ones open. Like there's so many opportunities.
Hmm.
Like yeah, you just gotta kind
That's
of
right.
harness that.
No, that's it. Like, that's the thing. Like, I can remember being, like, single and living in my own apartment and thinking, oh yeah, can never miss an episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation, okay, or
The original
or
Star Trek.
whatever else.
Okay,
Oh no, no, the original Star Trek was when I was a kid, okay,
okay,
like,
that was like
and they
yeah.
didn't have anything like syndication back then, so you had to be there at that moment watching it. No,
Oh,
no,
like the
what did they?
live, or
Yeah,
watching like
that's it. So,
while
like, the
watching it while it was on air. That's what it's called. Yeah, on air,
yes,
right? Yeah.
exactly, that's right, that's right. And then Star Trek TNG, well, that was the Picard days, right? And then, but, I would always be home watching the next episode. Well, then suddenly, you get married. Yeah, that's not so important anymore. I mean, like, it's not that, and technically, it really shouldn't have been that important then. But on the other hand, yeah, you just leave those things behind, and you move on to the next, and then you have kids, and that becomes a completely different thing.
Well, no, and then things are always
And
shifting, right? Like it's the whole thing of
oh
like you
yeah,
remember,
exactly.
like oh yeah, like you remember your childhood of like you were trying to just like, okay, I want to ask because like kind of the title of the video a little bit of like just past, present, what is the future of like your upbringing? How was that for you? Like, do you remember like your childhood and like what you kind of did
Oh,
and like
oh yeah. I remember a lot of great things in my childhood. I remember when, summer would come around, and you could actually just play all day. You would play, characters from your favorite TV show, or you would, you had various other things. I mean, like, admittedly, now I would end up saying politically incorrect were things like, well, playing cowboys and Indians. which was, based on, quite frankly, all the movies that you watched, or all of the TV series you watched, which were incorrect portrayals. And then the next is that like the Cold War was a big thing. And so, there you go. You're dealing with the good guys and the bad guys of that. And then yes, like the World War II was only just like 15, 20 years later, or 25 or even 30 years later, and you're still seeing a lot of comics that were based on, whether it was the European conflict or the Asian conflict, in those theaters. And like, I remember Sergeant Rock, and we would play that. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and that's really interesting of like kind of going off what you said there. It's like it's so interesting of how life back then was before you had to do like letters and like the way calls and stuff were received, and before the internet, right? Like communication was so it was so very like what the like I didn't know.
Oh. Yeah, well, yeah. You had to turn the dial in order to dial the phone number, right? You had to, okay? And if you were on a really old phone system, which I have to admit, I only was at one person's place one time where it was really old. You picked up the receiver and you hit it like 3 times, and you said, and you told the person at the switchboard who you wanted to contact. Okay, and they sat there, they would plug in and plug out in terms of that. And you never knew whether or not they were listening in on the call, because they could, right?
Yeah. I mean, hey, they're bored at work. Hey, what else do they got to do?
Yeah, exactly. And like these sort of things, like it's hard to imagine that was the beginning that now gets us to a smartphone that is able to figure out whether you want to have what you want to have for your dinner tonight if you're going to order out. Okay.
Or it's crazy how we went to that from supercomputers, like big computers and like human calculators and other stuff, to this. It's like, how did we get here?
Yeah. And the answer is that, we kept pushing boundaries of where we were, and we were at one place where people were trying to do the calculations, yes, and they had the methodologies. I remember I got a couple of textbooks that were about that, how to use logarithmic tables in order to do estimations on different things. But then the next that you get into is you now have a computer. You don't even know necessarily how you would go about calculating that number, okay? You just know that if you have the formula, you've got it, and you put it in, and boom, it's done. You can turn it into a function. Okay, so I could go down that road.
Yeah. Or also, like, hey, in the past, hey, like early games is also crazy too, of like how far everything's okay. Pong. Then after Pong, then we had like all this other stuff. Hey, yo.
I loved Bradley saying, what was it? It was, I'm so old. My first rage quit was with Pong. Okay?
Oh yeah, Brad said he was gonna steal that one from Twitch.
That was hilarious.
Oh, that was great.
Oh, that was awesome.
Twitch was like, if you really want to go there, my first rage quit was Pong. Hey, you want to go?
Oh, okay, yeah, exactly. Well, I'll tell you. You know what? That was the thing, right? Like, so you would be sitting around a Monopoly table, okay, with your friends, and then at some point somebody would rage quit, and I mean, like, rage quit. Everything got overturned, and
like
all
the board games, like flying. Everything went flying.
And then suddenly you realized, oh, I've got this mess I got to clean up and put all the stuff back in, or somebody's going to yell at me. Okay, and that's there. Well, guess what? That's the basis of the kind of behaviors kind of that we see today.
No, rage quit's been around since the beginning of human or like beginning of time. Okay, I bet you that caveman. Okay, here's the thing, Ronin. All the cavemen, bro. No, they were like, bro, I can't get this open. Rage Quit's been around since like the beginning
Yep.
of time. Okay, I bet you like
Oh, I bet you that's exactly it. Like, yeah, you can just see them doing tic-tac-toe with little stones, and then they start throwing them at each other. I mean,
start
like,
throw-
that's that's to be expected. That's again behaviors of frustration and anger and whatever, in order to try to just manage like what you're feeling and how you're
yeah.
dealing with life. Well, yeah, like no, and when we before like computers that like they weren't interconnected, or at least the one home computers weren't, and if you had a game, you played by yourself, and if you wanted to play against somebody who was playing against the computer, it had its very very menial kind of AI. But the best part is you couldn't actually spend time searching any source to find out how to cheat the game,
Hmm.
because it wasn't there. There wasn't anything that was being documented on
Or
that.
like
I
all the
remember,
guides and like old stuff, like all the like
yep.
the guides and
Oh,
other
oh,
stuff
yeah,
people would
yeah, yeah,
make
yeah.
or for games, and like you couldn't look anything up. It
True.
was like you go to your local library and try to find like a guide on like how to help you with the game or something, or that someone wrote, or
Yep, that can be the case, but there were some games that never got to be.
Mhm.
Okay, so like the game that I really enjoyed as kind of like solitary world building was something called Alien Legacy. Like the thing is that in that game, you built this kind of little empire of space stations and whatever in the tiny solar system that you were in, and you would progress the storyline that way. Nobody was going to actually give you any hints as to how to progress the game, or give you a cheat or a walkthrough. Like that was just not out there. So then you got into the multiplayer, and I remember multiplaying the Quake 1, okay, which was just after Doom. Okay,
Okay.
so that was the first what I considered to be the first polygon multiplayer game. And now you're dealing with a oh my god, it was a 56.6 baud modem that you were doing. And as you can guess, that's 56 kilobytes per second. Okay.
Oh,
Going down the pipe at that point. And you were trying to, and the best part is that you played that game not with necessarily friends, usually just pickup groups. And every once in a while, you would see that people were lagging out so much that all your projectiles, all your bullets were actually missing them. If you had fun, you were having fun. It was actually it was an interesting way to start communicating. And that was the other thing. It was always a new thing, and you always had fun with that new thing,
yeah.
because it was becoming a new thing.
I do
So
want to touch.
that was really cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I do want to touch on something of like not super cool of like that was kind of like you said first like multiplayer kind of stuff when multiplayer started becoming a thing. What was your first console? And what's the kind of the Ronin
Oh,
gaming
oops.
timeline with consoles and like
Ah,
how did you
okay.
get a computer? Like
So okay, so that okay, so I've never had a console except the Wii.
okay.
Okay,
Okay.
and I've never played multiplayer on the Wii other than multiplayer at home with family. Each of us having our own like what do you call those things? Wands or the with the
Wiimote
Wii? I can't recall
controller. So
what
yeah,
that
Wiimote
information.
Wiimote
Yeah,
something.
yeah, those
Yeah.
controllers. So that would be the only time that I was kind of like I had a console. The rest of the time it was a PC, because I just loved the PC,
Mhm.
right? Like that was the thing that. So as I'm sitting here thinking about it, I got like a 486, and yeah, I had a few games with that I bought with it. But no like the multiplayer. I should point out I had a multiplayer game, and it was called um, uh, Mech Warrior Mercenaries, and I had to go through something called Kaylee, which was a gaming service that kind of pulled multiplayers together. You could do that, and then in order to play against people, and you were in MechWarrior, you were in the classical battle suit kind of thing, and blowing up things. And I remember one time the person took a screenshot of me where I was actually jumping up trying to get a angle on where they were with my jump jets in order to shoot them. And they saw that they were actually able to tear off pieces of my mech every single time. And I was just sitting there trying to get at them. And they thought it was kind of cool that they were teenagers, and I think I was well into my 30s, near mid 30s, and they thought, oh, it was kind of cool that real old fella at the age of 35 was in fact playing against a bunch of teenagers, hoping to best them at that point. No, that wasn't going to happen.
So this is crazy of the era of arcades and everything. You were around when what were arcades to you? Did you play arcades? Were you a partaker?
Pre computer. So this was when in my university days, I would go to kind of this, the arcades that would be in the the bar at the university, because I was such a nerd. I never went off university grounds. I just stayed, studied, did all of that. Okay, I was such a nerd, such a nerd. Hey, I was always in the front row at class. And
okay, I have to be in the front row. I'm blind.
Okay, got it. But I chose to be there, front row in the class, and I always had these multicolored pens so that I could, use them
stuff?
to write down.
Oh yeah, you're so organized.
Oh no, not anymore. Not anymore. I got rid of that addiction very quickly once I hit work. But in any case, in those days, there was what was it? Time Pilot. There was Defender. There was some game I remember
Pac-Man
where
Centipede?
it was you were on. No, I didn't bother with that because I could never get very far with it. I kind of you put in a few quarters, and believe me, quarters were worth a lot back then. Let me tell you, okay. But the thing was that but there was a game where what you did was you were trying to outrun these creatures, and you had to actually dig a hole, and they would fall into the hole. Then you'd take you dig them out with the hole with a shovel, and then you'd use the shovel to beat them into the hole. If you did it right, you could actually get them to die. But otherwise, you'd still be running away from the next creature while they get up and they start chasing you. And if you kind of had it, that was actually a fun game, because we would all sit around, and that was the other part. Because you could only have one player at a time, you went with a whole bunch of friends, and you just sat around taking turns and razzing each other. Okay, so that's
Yo, wait,
the other
this
part.
is the OG. This is the OG, hanging out with friends, gassing each other up. Yo, wait, hold on.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's it. That again, these things don't change. Or rather, these things have changed in the technology and the use, but they the behaviors, the feelings, they haven't gone away. They're no different than they were back then. So if you can relate to that, that's the thing. But yeah, so there was the fact that it was actually a lot more communal. But when I sat there and played Time Pilot, I went by myself. I had my stack of quarters, and I remember just getting I think I spent at least $5 to try to get it to the next level, only to not have it at the next level at that point. So there we go. That was just amazing. I remember that instance, and and just throwing in quarter after quarter so that it didn't time out. And then in the end, just saying, okay, that's it. It's done. I got to the next level, and
Yeah.
I'm okay now.
I mean, that's super cool of like arcades. I really wish I was like, okay, I wanted the, because like arcades for early 2000s kind of then was like, we still had them a little bit, but not as like much in the sense of like, it was all right. Like I vaguely remember arcades in my childhood, a lot of like parties and arcades. But like I wouldn't even imagine how fun it was like 20, 30 years ago. Like, oh my god, I wish. Oh, that's a,
Well, even and that was at the time when we were able to, have like a
yeah.
CRT screen and there was a computer behind it. Well, think about the times when there weren't computers. Okay, so like as an example, the pinball. Okay,
Hmm.
the pinball games were just they were awesome, but there were also some other games that were just scrollers where what you did was you had to actually line up yourself like your whatever your guns on a specific spot in order to hit the right thing, and if you didn't, oh well, you game over, and then you had to wait for it to scroll back and then you'd play it again. Okay, like it was nuts. And what were you trying to do? Well, you were trying to get the perfect score. Well, if you got the perfect score, like what would you be able to put your name in there? No. It was just your own feeling of you got it, and that was it. And it was just interesting how we still wanted to accomplish something, even though we had much less that proved that we had actually done something in terms of in terms of high scores or otherwise. And so, like, it was a very interesting time back then,
And then
and
even
it's
more like
hard
with
sometimes to
VR.
just mirror that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like
Oh my gosh.
VR is a whole other topic back then of like VR's been around for how long? Like the concept of the future of virtual reality and like escaping into reality, like the early concepts of it were pretty interesting. With
Oh,
do you remember like it like kind of any
I
VR
re-
stuff or like kind of how it was?
oh yes, I remember. I remember going to a technology exhibit, and they had VR. And this was more than 10 years ago. In fact, sorry, I think this was more than 20 years ago. And I put something on my head, and it had either, I think it was LCD screens, and they were like super pixelated because like they
Hmm.
couldn't have been any more than like 640 by 480 at most, likely 320 by 240. So you're sitting there looking at this incredibly pixelated screen, and you're holding a controller, but the controller really all it is it's technically a weapon. So
Yeah.
you fire it, and you fire at something that's coming across, and has a specific pathway, and it's all very simple polygons. And I had to admit, like, I looked at that and I thought, yeah, whatever it is we're doing, we're kind of a little far away from it. But it was really cool to be there and be able to turn my head and see just what was in the area around it. Now you only had 30 seconds in which to do that, and then you had to give it over to the next person. And the lineup was long.
I mean, it's so cool where early VR was because that sounds like that's even before we had 3 degrees of freedom, which was the Oculus Go, which was the first
Oh,
ever
yeah.
standalone 3 degrees of freedom. 3 degrees of freedom in VR is where you could turn, you could look around, and you could look like this. That's 3 degrees,
Look,
left,
yeah.
right, and up. There was no six
Yeah.
degrees of freedom where it's up, down, and you could like move. You have hand movement. Like 6 degrees of freedom of VR
Yeah.
changed everything. Like that was crazy. Like,
Oh, yeah.
and then like that sounds like where VR was really just like you looked into a box, you had your like tracking
Hmm.
thing or weapon, and you just like it was stationary. It's very before it was any
Hmm.
like moving around or anything or like the thing of like even the Google Cardboard was huge, even though everyone's like, oh, it's just a piece of cardboard, you put your phone in it, mate. Like that was huge Like,
Oh, that was
the,
huge.
yeah, like the concept of like what it brought, but even for the mostly the tinkerer market, like people that couldn't afford like the dev kit one, Oculus, all this early technology and other stuff. Of like, I think the dev kits and all that were like maybe $300-400 on launch or something of like for the very early like the box VR where it had
Right.
like maybe like I can't even remember what the resolution of it was, but it's very like crazy on where that went to where we have six
Right.
degrees of freedom in VR. We can move around. I have hands, and it's clear. We have pancake lenses. What? How did we end up with this? This is crazy. Like, what things went from in 10 years? Like with like before you could even like move around and do all this and like what the like
Oh yeah, well, I remember getting my first Quest. Okay, and it was a wonderful birthday gift, or not birth, sorry, Christmas gift from my wife. That I had not expected at all because like
yeah.
that was just amazing, and I put it on, and I remember going through the tutorial, like the intro tutorial, and saying, "Oh my God, this is incredible. This is totally unexpected. This is not what I expected that VR had already gotten to." And I said, okay, this is definitely worth what we're getting into here. And then
Because
very
would you
quickly after
say
that, yeah,
oh, like for like, would you say that was your first moment where like, because you've seen very early VR before even Oculus,
right,
birth of Oculus, everything like you, and then you were your expectation of VR was like, oh, it's gonna look the same, or it's like VR hasn't come that far, and then you look in and it's like, what were your impressions? What was the
my, I what got me was just how quickly everything was tracking. Like, and I say that as an observation, but intuitively it was, hey, I just turned my head and I could see what I expected to see. I could see, trees and the rocks and whatever. And yes, it was all vectors, but oh my gosh, it was incredible. It was like I couldn't have believed that you could actually get it to be so smooth and to act in such a way that it mimicked the same physics of real life, and
and
that's
this was
what
the
got me.
original Quest,
That's it. This was the
the one.
yeah. So it was an Oculus Quest 1. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's right.
that was my first one
Which
too. Yeah,
definitely different from what I understand the Rift was and various others. So like, I get that. But like I said, it was just wow, I really couldn't believe it that we were there, that we had that then. And then just quickly after that I got Beat Saber.
let's
Okay.
go. Woo!
Yes, exactly. Oh, yeah, immediately couldn't. Once I played the demo, forget it. It was like what is it, Fry from Futurama saying, "Shut up and let me give you my money." So like,
Give me my money. Hey, that's still used to this day. Hey, everyone, hey, hey,
shut up and take my money. That's it.
take
Yeah,
my
that's
money.
it. Oh,
Yo, Valve releases their new headset. Yo, take my money. Yo, give me.
oh my gosh. Well, that's actually, I was just listening to Mystical talk about the fact that Asus is now going to possibly be
Asus,
the first.
first
Yeah,
company producing a headset with some sort of like Meta OS software, and that's
yeah,
exciting.
that's it.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that because they've already kind of, well, like Luna, whoever it is that is
yeah, they're like,
leaking this stuff,
hmm hmm
is literally saying, yeah, it looks like it's gonna have like face and eye tracking. It looks
let's
like it's gonna
go.
have a few different things. Oh my gosh! Well,
I'm
like as we're
excited to see
sitting
more
here,
competition. Or like the same thing with like the
yes,
Samsung headset or what they're working on over there, or like okay, I think it's really cool. Like
mm-hmm.
the Megan X, the one that's releasing February March from Shiftall, that looks really good. It's $1,900 though, and it's almost the price of a 5090. So personally, I won't be buying it, but
Yep, same here. Same here. Like that's it's either the graphics card or it's the headset, or when you compound
that's almost two
the
big
two
screens.
together.
Like that's a little pricey.
Oh my God, that's incredible. Yeah,
I don't
that's
know,
right.
but the
That's
same
right.
thing with this tech of like, I kind of see why companies are going top down. I'm not sure if you heard what me and
Right.
Bradley talked about at the mistake of like, Meta has gotten such of like a history and the very like the R&D
Hmm.
costs of like going from such high quality products at low prices. They really should have gone like, like, it's really good what they did for the industry, but like what they should have kind of went from like Quest Pro top down would have been a little better,
Oh,
and getting that check
yeah.
cheaper from top down, you know? Because like,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's like I kind of think that, but then, the story always ends up being very different than we imagine it, right? Like, Meta bought Oculus, okay? Like, that's what they did. And then after that, they said, okay, we need to create our own, and came up with the Quest 2.
I'm gonna say
And
this.
they did
I
not. Yeah, go ahead.
I feel like a lot of the R&D was kind of done in a way, right? Because all the research and development, a lot of it, like slam tracking or camera tracking or slam, what the camera tracking is called, with like
Yep.
what's used in the ultimate trackers is slam tracking. What's used in these headsets. Quest One was the first one to have slam tracking. With the Rift,
Right.
the Rift or the Rift S, the Rift also had it, had cameras on it, but the Quest One was the first one of the first iterations with slam tracking. They probably took that and improved on it. Like the whole thing, if they bought Oculus, Quest 2 was the second. I think a lot of the R&D was already done, but I wouldn't say a lot of like all of it, because like
Hmm.
certain things with them developing like the 3 with like the depth sensor and like some of these other stuff, so like
Right.
very like, but at its core I feel like slam tracking and camera tracking was mostly done in a way, and they kind of incorporated it into other stuff like the Quest 2 and
Oh no, I think, yeah. Well, probably you're quite right. But again, the stories are very interesting as to how you get there. Like when you if you actually work in a company or in an industry for more than a decade, you do find out that the stories that happen, the way it actually happens, is probably never the way that you would design it. No one would ever design usually the way that the story plays out. What they do is they acquire something, they have it, then they say, okay, now we need to create another one so that we show that we have ownership. And then suddenly something else comes on the market. Is it a money maker? Is it a money loser? Who the hell cares?
that's what the 2
It's
was.
brand that's the value. Okay,
That's kind
right?
of what the 2 was, right? Because if we really look
Yeah.
back at the VR timeline, the 2 was basically better chip. It was an XR2 Gen 1.
Hmm.
It was, they made it white because Meta fucking, I don't fucking know. And then the
Yeah.
controllers were pretty
Yeah.
much the same,
Yep.
like as the 1. It was
Right.
just a little improved because the 1 came out the year before, 2019. And then there was 2020, and then this is when and everything happened, like the whole like thing. It's
Hmm.
like the bad thing, like that's when like releasing the Quest 2 was honestly kind of a big deal because everyone had time. That's why
Hmm.
VR kind of exploded.
Uh, uh, Actually, when you think about it, everybody had kids that were driving them nuts.
True.
And
Oh my
so,
God, this is horrible. And then
God.
no, 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 and they were all like, "Give him a VR headset." Oh brother, this is what happened. Oh no.
Yeah, that was that. Excuse me. That is actually kind of the story that I always think happened there. Like, oh, I need to have a VR. It's the kids are wanting to have the VR headset. Why? Because they want to play gorilla. Well, not gorilla tag, but
Monkey.
they want to play. They want to play. And the console is already the Sony or the Xbox console is already kind of lost its shine at this point in time. They're bored. I'm bored. I'm gonna like and they come around to their parents. I'm bored. I want a new console. The new console was the Quest
V
2.
VR
Okay.
is more of a value than console, and I know I'm gonna get some like mixed opinions on this. VR, with the amount of VR games in development, of how the competition with the pricing of how consoles and everything out, like the PS5 Pro's $700 bucks, like in the market
Yeah.
of like where consoles are releasing nowadays, and then even a Quest 4 with face and eye tracking is probably gonna have to be competitive around $600, $650 for the base model.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's like interesting, right? Because the Quest, they're always gonna have their cheaper model with like the Quest 3S and like maybe a Quest 4S, right? With like to meet the
Right.
standard of like, oh, an Xbox One or like all these other consoles are like $300-400, and you want to kind of meet around that range where it's like, oh, it's not much more. Let's get a VR headset for them, or
No, that's it. That's it. And again, like we kind of have to remember that again, stories are often these connected situations that have absolutely nothing to do with what the person had actually designed. Like they have nothing to do with some kind of overarching strategy. It is all a lot of things have to do with probability, chance, and hopefully opportunity. You kind of have to also remember that's life. Life turns into both that opportunity to succeed or to fail. Some people will say, "Oh, well, you just have to be prepared." The answer is no. Sometimes that opportunity ain't going to be there, or more importantly, it was no matter what you were going to fail. Or you were, no matter what, you were actually going to succeed because
oh
that
yeah,
was part of the luck.
or the general
That's
thing of
it.
like
So
kind of like going into a little bit of like modern day to like just generally the overarching question before we go into the future stuff, like to where the
am
internet
I just
and virtual reality and everything kind of went.
uh
Are you surprised where everything went? Are you with the
okay,
results?
the thing is, okay, I'm going to say no, I'm not disappointed. I'm going to be honest. I will say I am not only surprised, I'm somewhat pleasantly surprised as to where things went. Now, admittedly, that doesn't mean that I'm not without disappointment.
Yeah.
Like the concept of social media has become a challenge to deal with. Like we are a social animal, but when we did not realize, I think, the power behind our desire to remain social and to remain and to in fact kind of try to conquer that media as individuals. So what that does is that means we look for hits and we look for views and we look for, and as we're finding out now, there is this desire by many different structures that really want to get that without any conscience as to what is going to happen. So that's kind of part of that. I'm disappointed with that, but I end up having to say overall, I'm very impressed. Because even with all of these hard things that do happen, these hurtful things that do happen in this space, I end up saying, but there are actually some absolutely beautiful and lovely things that are happening in this space. And I think it's great because that really tells us that for many people, this is living out their their life of being supportive and welcoming and in many ways becoming communities that are drawn together and
Yeah, and
really help each other.
yeah, and the concept of like the internet brings so much people together. We wouldn't
It
have
does.
this probably wouldn't have been a thing even. Like I probably wouldn't have met you, Gami, Tizzy. All of these people like are out there in the world, but I probably would have never met all you guys at all if it wasn't for the internet
Hmm.
and VR. It's crazy what this could do and how it brings people together.
Hmm. Absolutely. Like here we are. I'm in Toronto, and you're in Southern California.
Yeah, and
And
it's like
I kind of and not only that, we've got friends who are just a little ways away. They're
Gami's from
in,
like a different like whole another like country and stuff. Like we're all here. Like it's
yes,
insane
exactly,
on what
or
connects.
Europe or other,
Yeah.
yes, exactly. So like why? And somebody will say, well, no, you can do that, out of out in real life. And the answer is Not really,
It's called plane tickets.
because
It's
yes,
expensive.
it's called plane tickets. But okay, so say right after this, after we finish up here, I can go off and go talk to friends who are both from New Jersey and Sweden at the same time. Talk with them, have a laugh and a joke, and then go off to another place and talk to my Australian friends. And like and within the batting of an eyelash, that happens is an incredible thing, and that you build these relationships even though you're that far away and you're all together at the same time. That's I get it. You could do that on Zoom, okay? So as an example.
Okay, Zoom was so bad. I still hate that
And
platform. Oh my god, I had to do school on that shit. Oh my god.
yeah, got it. But like but so as an example, like as we've discussed, like I do provide technical support for my church to go on to Zoom and things
Yeah.
like that. So it's going to be around. It's a very sociable kind of media. But the thing is that no, I can't say that I
And
have
what it's
that
brought,
form
right?
of connection that I have here.
And
Go
what
on,
technology
sorry.
has brought. What the pandemic brought.
Yeah.
Or like working from home.
Oh,
That wasn't really much of a thing or really popular until I'd say recent years of like how people want to work from home, work online or from Zoom or from all over the place. Like I would say that's what's kind of popular or a lot of the time before what 2019 was and before was you would go into the office 5 days a week. You'd go in, you wouldn't work from home.
right.
You maybe in some jobs like video editing or some other stuff, but most jobs you would still go into the office. Not until after
That's right.
certain events like was working from home even popular and
Okay,
changed a
so
lot.
like as an example, I was a leader of a small team in my company. I was small fry, so I was a frontline leader. But what happened was, and I will say this, at the start, before the pandemic, I actually said, well, like technically I need to have people here working with me in front of me, because how do I know that you're not working? How do we get those synergies going? How do we do that? And the answer was, once the pandemic hit, and I tell you right now, I made sure that everybody had the technology they needed to get home and do their things. The fact simply is I had to I was able to actually see that they could do their job, that we could still be a team while we were there. Now there's a lot of, like, in at least here in Toronto, there's a lot of pushback on that sort of thing. They want people now to give up hybrid work arrangements. They want them to be in the office all the time. Why? Because the leaders want them there. But why is that? Because the leaders want to assert their presence to the leaders above them by having
Yeah,
being able to show the people below them.
some
Okay,
sort of
which is
normalism again,
and
would you say? Because a lot of like my dad goes into
well,
the office now sometimes a little. Like things are to what a normal was. Some things are kind of returning to that a little bit. People are going in more to work and like
right, right. But it depends on the situation, right? Like it's where and I get it. Like some people will say, no, we need to have the people back. We need to have them there. Why? Because all of that synergy is going to be lost if they aren't having a water cooler conversation. And they probably don't quite realize just how those water cooler conversations, some of them were in fact increasing the toxicity of the workplace, and how now that you have to schedule time and spend time and do things, you actually can decrease the toxicity amongst your workers. One, because you're able to have these private conversations about things that you want to detoxify about, without having to worry about being overheard. But then the second is just simply that you are no longer having to look like you're competing all the time with your fellow workers. Okay, so
yeah,
like that's an important thing.
And guess what?
like in front of your boss. Yeah, go ahead.
And same thing with that of like how things were going a little bit of like the whole really horrible meta thing with the Quest Pro was like, oh guys, we're working in the metaverse. Bro, what is it? Bro, whoa. That's never gonna happen for a
Yeah, I
while.
have
Okay,
to
same
admit
thing with
that
Vision Pro.
that was nuts.
It's funny, but it's like, okay, who's working in their VR headset? Oh my god.
Well, okay. But now you can see that a VR headset, when you put it on, you can actually do things in it that you otherwise would require a very different kind of workspace. Okay, so as an example, in the company that I was working in, they were trying to get into quote open office spaces, but then they were also trying to reduce the footprint of every employee. So instead of having an office space of about like 10 foot by 10 foot with walls so that, what the hell, you
Apple
go
Vision
ahead.
Pros. The virtual desktop,
Ah,
you can have so much different things.
that's it.
Like, okay, that could some sort of be some sort of future, and you can connect it to your laptop like little cubicles. I could see the future
Mm-hmm.
of offices being some sort of like working in virtual reality, but having your virtual office with your computer with this
That's it.
technology and having meetings. Like, this could be some sort of a future, and that scares the shit out of me because that is crazy.
But again, that's important because what you have to do is allow people to have space or they don't feel they have any creativity. So if you're sitting there in an office now that is like you're 3 feet away from the next person and you're quite honestly, you're able to smell what they had for lunch.
Oh my.
And you're also able to like, well, think about that. And that's not like again, chocolate is good. I'm okay with tuna fish and egg salad, but like there are certain other things. Okay, yeah. But there are other things that you kind of you have to kind of have there. But then at the same time, like whatever you're doing, you've got this other person who's watching you what you're doing, and it's not that you are being competitive. It's just that you don't feel like you've got any space. Well, son of a gun, look at us. Okay, I'm going to say to you, my desk is right here. I think I've got like
I'm in the middle of my
that's kind of
room.
a hallway.
My desk is over here.
I've got my exercise bike is right here. If I move this way, I'm going to bump into something. I move that way, I'm going to bump. But you know what? I
Yeah.
feel like I've got all the space in the world.
The virtual spaces are crazy. But with the perception of the virtual horizon seems forever away. That seems so far.
Yeah, love it. Absolutely love it. Gotta tell you,
God.
that's why
Yeah.
I love being here. This is great. And then so yes, is Apple Vision Pro the thought? If you're going to turn things
It's
into
the start. It's a
these
start.
yeah,
It's definitely a
it's a
start.
start.
Going into future of like kind of that same technology of like stuff from CES and going more into the future topic of VR, the new Pimax Dream Air looks crazy. It's definitely a
Oh
Vision Air.
my
It's
gosh.
definitely a Vision Pro competitor. I'm not sure if you've seen what it looks like. It's a self-tightening head strap. It looks crazy. It's
I
self
I heard about that.
Yeah, self-tightening IPD. And then it has or self-adjusting IPD. Then it has like 4K displays, 8K display. It's crazy, but like,
Right,
it
right,
looks really
right.
good. But then also, what I said in my Orca video, releasing this Friday,
Yep.
we need better head straps on heads and on headsets that are not expensive. That's a $1,200 headset. I don't want the Zuckerberg Thong 2.0 on my goddamn device. Get a better head strap. What the things are crazy. Also, I need to like, this is coming out in like maybe beginning of February, this episode, but like I will link the newest Thrill Seeker video. Literally came out today as of recording this. I'm watching this after.
Oh,
It's the CES video. Oh my god. Like,
Oh, that'll be cool. I gotta see that one too.
Yeah, yeah. When Throw uploads now, it's literally a special occasion. Bro barely uploads.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
But there's also
when
the
is
thing of
it?
like
When is Thrill's interview
speaking.
happening?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know. What do you?
Oh, come
What do
on.
you?
That'll be cool. I definitely want to make sure that I watch
Yo,
that
hold
one.
up. Yo, Thrill
Absolutely.
Seeker,
We gotta make
Fia,
that
yo,
happen.
Yuko EX, yo, possible collabs. Hey, come on, please. Hey, yo, that'd be sick. Hey, yo.
Oh yeah, that'll be cool. That'll be cool.
I don't know. I talking to people and figuring out stuff and finding out other people's stories and kind of just talking like this is very chill. This is very cool. I love
Yep.
talking about it like this. But also just a general view of like I don't know what I'm talking about when it comes to like old technology, arcades and everything. Like I love getting their perspective of so much different perspectives. It's so cool.
Mm-hmm. No, it is cool, and it's cool to remember some of this stuff because not a lot of questions about these older experiences. They were there, like I like so as an example, like I actually had a chance to talk to some World War II pilots. Okay, people who had flown missions over Germany, had actually flown Lancasters, and they were bombing runs, and many of them, so many did not make it back, but even their stories were ones of where they, as a crippled aircraft, the only reason that they got back because their compass was destroyed was the fact that it was at night and they could travel above the clouds and see the stars and use the stars to guide them back to their base.
Or same thing on that.
And
Have you seen Godzilla -1?
yes, I have.
That story of
Absolutely.
like the World War II,
That was
the like
awesome.
the whole concept story of that was so good. Oh my god,
Yeah,
it's so
yeah, that
good.
was
Oh,
good.
oh.
Yes, yes. I agree completely with you
It was
there. I
about
thought that was
a
neat.
kamikaze pilot, main character. Yeah.
Yes, yes. And no spoilers, but I will say I like that ending. It tied things up. I don't know, like, you see, this is the thing. Like my father was ethnic Japanese, meaning that his parents both had been born in Japan and came to Canada, and he had no idea about Japan, even though he looked Japanese, and he did not visit Japan until he was 81 years old. So, like, that, which what I thought was just awesome, and I really wish I had gone with him to see Japan at that point, because that would have been fun to be with him at that time. But unfortunately, he passed away before we could ever have a trip of that nature.
Of me learning more about my culture in Japan and like kind of what I talked about in Nora's
Mm-hmm.
video of the cultural and historical significance of like what in the past of like history and just like learning more about it. Like I don't really like know much about it, but learning more about it and just what tragedies and stuff that happened, it's very like kind of crazy on what and how people can forgive or what are certain things that happen and like how things have come over with like certain information of like what the U.S. did during war to Hiroshima and a bunch
Yes.
of other stuff and the tragedies that happened and like but what's crazy to me of how Japan took it and how some of the people there don't even have grudges or they can forgive, you know, what
Mm-hmm.
possibly of what
Mm-hmm.
of the events and everything. And I'm like, I just hope we never get to use that nuke technology ever again. Hey, guys, that's dangerous. Like, no, please.
Yes. No. No. Like absolutely. But it's like a lot of things, like we're now at that point where we actually can solve a lot of problems if we didn't have to. If we
Yeah.
did, we knew that we didn't. If we rather decided that we weren't going to go to war.
Well, then
We
there's
weren't
also
going
the
to use
whole
conflict.
other thing with technology of how Palmer Luckey and other people are developing autonomous weapon systems. And this is a
Yes,
whole nother
yes.
thing with like that scary thing of like
Well, yeah.
it's the concept of like, well, you have that, and it's the consciousness of like you got to do that. But what if you don't have to do anything at all? And it's like, well, that's just even worse, ain't it? I'm like, bro.
Well, like it was like what was it? It was I was watching actually a short that had Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Yeah, I know.
I don't know whether you've ever heard of. Yeah, okay. So,
I
and
watched
I have to
the
admit, I kind of.
show Cosmos of his when I was a kid. It was my favorite, one of my
Oh,
favorites.
cool.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So what I did, what it was it was about um, uh, somebody had said that when they invented the bow and arrow, somebody made the point that now we can be. I don't know I don't remember the words well, but it's like I now don't have to face my enemy to kill them. And I don't, and that was the thought of the bow and arrow being the projectile. And you kind of look back and think, yeah, and you know what? That's what warfare is about. Removing the personality of your enemy, dehumanizing as you go forward in order to be able to, talk about it as a goal as opposed to here's a human being that you're dealing with. And that's that. This now we have the intelligence and the ability to say, yeah, we've got lots of stuff. Why are we trying to hold on to it so bad that we're making other people our enemy in that result when
In
we
the end, I'm
definitely
gonna
live in
say
an
it. We're
abundance.
gonna have
That's
to
in
come
yeah.
together to work on stuff. As the
Oh,
human race and
absolutely.
as something of like just generally, we're gonna have to or some at some point in these next 20, 30, what 40, 50 years even of like we're gonna have to come together and find a common ground or understanding to do something or to even save the technology or what's left of the resources on this planet because if we don't,
Right.
things are already kind of becoming a shit show, and I don't want to see the end of that.
Nope. I agree. I agree
Yeah.
completely with you. Absolutely. I mean, I think where we're going, but again, these are, once we decide that we're going to put boundaries around a solution, then we have to work within that. And we actually can be so creative when it comes to things like that.
And
So, like,
also,
that's,
going back to like Neil deGrasse Tyson a little,
yep.
the one thing that has really hit me in with the words recently that has been really deep in the sense of one of his quotes or the thing that he said on a podcast of I feel like a lot of people this is a little bit of what I think about it too, but like a lot of people do not I feel like respect the whole feeling of like why you're here or the purpose of like why are we here? What is the purpose of living? Or like the thing of like I had the genetics are horrible or like we're all birthed with different like outcomes or whatever what we're given, but like the thing of like none of us really chose to be here, but it's the whole thing of like of what he said of like it's maybe 1 in 500 trillion of a chance that you were possibly the one chosen to like be here. So it's like the thing of like you really better like appreciate the sense of like why, it's like that really hit me on the sense of like what is purpose? What is all this? Why are you the one that got chose before even another Adam or someone else got chose to be born? Like it's the whole
Right.
crazy thing of like people have to have more respect for just like life. Like damn. Like
I agree. I agree. I agree. It's, and that's again where if we can get people to, I say if we can get people already know this, That's the problem. But what they have is they have this other thing, which I think is technically fear. And it's about
Fear rules everyone
and it's fear. Well, no, it doesn't. I'm going to
on some
disagree
sense.
there, because I think fear, however, though, is easily manipulated,
Yes.
and it is easily taken and turned into something that it really should never have been. But if you're looking for goals, and again, like some people, their goal is I want to die with the most toys, okay, or I want to be famous, and that's another different thing. So the fact simply is that what we need to do is understand what is it that is what we are afraid of, and then on top of it, just embrace that. Embrace that that's there, that we are afraid. And then
And
from
valid,
that
because there's so much
vulnerability,
things that you don't know. Or like fear's
yeah,
very like it's been manipulated through how many generations, how many years, for how long
oh,
of what the
hmm
universe has
hmm
been like. Fear's always been some sort of concept in whatever, you know? And
right,
it's like so crazy to be in the sense of like of how deep everything is, of you just really have to kind
yeah.
of like think like no one knows what they're doing. Let's be honest here. We're just kind of like all kind of going about this like doing whatever the fuck. Did you know what you were? I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. We're just kind of doing. Oh my.
Oh, you might kind of know, again, like that idea of, okay, I have a goal. Well, what is the goal? The goal is to put out this report that's going to have this information in it. Okay, there. That's the goal. Okay. Can we get there? Well, we have this tool called Excel spreadsheets, and we have this data. Cool. Okay, so now piece it together. Yeah, I get that. We know what we're doing when we have that. But then you've asked the next question, which is, do we know why we're doing this? Why is this
Well, and
all
then
so
there's so
important?
much deep questions of like, of course, like society and what everything's become of like you need enough money to survive or get by, right? To like live, have a
Hmm.
home, do whatever. And then it's also like, well, then you need a job, you need to do all this other stuff. And it's like, well, everybody kind of figures out stuff in a general way of like what you know and what you have to do to get by, right? But it's also like,
Right.
then there's so much more things to what living is. It's like, do you have your goals? Do you have your hobbies? Do you have your friends? Do you have the people you care about? You have a partner. You have what's retirement? What's this? What's that? It's like
Yeah.
so much things.
Yeah, well, that was the thing for me with retirement, when I was saving up for retirement, because you have to. How much is enough? And then, like,
How far do you go
you got to ask the next
before?
question:
Yeah.
how far do you go? And there's a lot of people I know who won't retire because they're afraid that it's not enough. Not enough of what? Like, what is it that you're thinking you're going to have to do? It's this ridiculous. It's this idea that you don't have enough, and yet if you put boundaries around it and you just sort of say, look, I'm going to have this much, and I'm just going to try to make it work. And if it doesn't, then I'm going to have to think of something else. Okay? And I'm going to have to think about something else when the time comes, because if I try to predict it, I'm going to get it wrong anyway. And then I'm going to lose what little bit of living that I'm worried I'm not going to get.
And then in retirement, it's
Okay?
the whole other thing of like you've been working to what? It's like, what do you do in retirement? That's what my aunt has asked, or just like generally like when you retire, you have to find things to do, or what hobbies to do, or what my
Yes,
uncle,
exactly.
what my dad's sister, my uncle, my uncle B, like he's like, what am I gonna do in retirement? Like, what is there? I have to find hobbies, or like, what do I want to spend my time on? It's like, do either work, do hobbies, or it's like you have all this time.
And don't get me wrong, your uncle has a very valid point, because I have seen when I was like only 5 years into the company I was working for, people retiring who literally died a year later because they didn't feel they had anything else to do. They just fell apart. Their job was all that they were. And their job and the associations they had that had to do with the job, the friendships that they had that had to do with that job, and playing golf meant something because it was all part of the sealing the deal. And then at the end of it, they had nothing that they wanted to do that wasn't the job. And invite your uncle into VR.
I actually gave him my old Quest too. He's been wanting to play Half-Life Alyx. Yeah.
Oh, has he? Oh, okay. Well, you know what? If he comes into VR,
I've been trying to get him into anime.
Let's
I've been trying to get him to watch some stuff. He's been trying. Oh, I'm trying to get him into. Yeah.
Oh, that would be great. That would be great. No, I'll.
Okay, go really switching the switch here for a couple last topics. But
okay, let's switch it.
You're in the VTubers. Yeah, the internet and VTubers. Are you crazed on like where that went? Virtual avatars, virtual idols.
I have to admit, I was amazed by that. I guess it didn't really surprise me to see. Okay, here's VR. Here we're seeing people do weird things inside of VR.
Yeah.
Okay, that's cool. But then you start getting to see people who are doing it full time. The one that I started with was Fillion. Okay, like I just ended up thinking like, oh man, she is just crazy because she kept breaking all of her equipment, and I kind of think that was very expensive. So okay, that's cool, but she's making a go of it, and when I say a go of it, I think she's probably pretty successful, and I hope she thinks she's successful at that. But then you get into other VTubers, and it's not necessarily the VTubing in VR, but it's actually just that whole idea of here is a person who can complete a persona by putting up an image that acts very close to how they would like people to see them. And, like you've got people like Shy Lily, Iron Mouse.
Oh, yeah, like playing up a character, like kind of playing into like certain things. And it's very cool. Like Lily's a great... Yeah, Bao has her personality with the way she does VTubing. It's very different from a lot of other VTubers. Or the very, like, each of them are unique. And that's why people like the individual VTubers they watch. And it's very, like, for example, like some VR VTubers of like Starheart, music, one of my favorite.
Oh yes,
Starheart,
absolutely, 100%, completely agree. Love
it's
Starheart.
Such a wild market, and I love to see new people get into it and where it's gone. Because like I was kind of there since the beginning of like a little bit of like the new beginning. I'd say the new generational beginning of VTubers. I started watching around 2021. So, and Holo EN kind of kicked off the Western audience, I'd say. Holo Live EN totally kicked off the Western audience for VTubing, which is around 2020. 2020, 2021.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, I have to admit, the one that kind of surprised me was Vidal and Neurosama.
This is crazy. I will put... Okay. AI scares me. And I totally know, like, Neuro is a very, like... Neuro is a concept of creating an AI VTuber, but it's training an AI model. That's what scares me.
Right.
Of, like, Neuro knows so much of what is, but AI learns off what it learns, right? Neuro is an AI model. They're training a model of... Neuro's entertaining, but it's also, like... Bro, AI scared. AI, bro.
So you can just imagine. Here we go. We have like instead of having this friend that I have in VR chat who is kind of living in Southern California. Oh, I'm going to have this other friend who is a VR chat avatar that is connected to an AI, like AI Joken,
It's crazy on what
follows
these
me
do.
around and tells me all these things that I really want to know. And then we talk in a way that that AI is actually feeding back, so that I will talk more and they will talk more, because that's what an AI does, is it wants to speak and be heard. And that's its
They're
overriding
learning.
passion.
They're learning. It's
Yes.
oh.
Oh, and they're learning faster than we can
Okay, and then it's the
imagine
whole thing with
at this
NVIDIA.
moment.
Bro, NVIDIA 5090, 5080. Yo, guys, we have new
Yeah.
generated frames of 5090. Yo, look at all our generated frames. Yo, we got Cyberpunk running that this
Oh,
shit with our 5090,
yep.
and Jensen Huang rocks up like, bro, look at my cool ass jacket. Bro, what the
Oh,
fuck?
which I would not buy. As hot as that sounds. Oh my God. That, like, again, yeah, there you go. Like, you're going to have those frames now rendered by AI,
Yeah,
as
and
opposed to
it's the
being
funny
rendered
thing of
by
it's
the
not even real
yeah.
frames. What is it? It's AI
Yeah.
generated. Like,
Will you be able to tell the difference? Likely not. Okay? Like,
this is
as it get, like,
crazy.
yeah, okay.
What the technology's
Yeah,
going. Like
exactly. Yeah,
or
it
but
is.
also like what the Quest
Yeah.
3 of what they're talking about of like how some of the tracking algorithms is AI adjusted with
Yep.
what is it's crazy. All I'm hoping is, at least with video editing and some of my fields that I care about, I don't think AI will ever get good enough to where it can replicate what a human really puts love into their work of the creative aspect of like video editing is very to me in the sense of the amount of skill and experience, but the amount of like ideas and the amount of creativity that goes into video editing is very different from what
Right.
an AI can do. You chuck footage at an AI and be like, oh yeah, I can edit out a whole movie, but where's the personality to it? Where's the love? Where's the creativity in that film? I don't think an AI will ever get to that
Yep.
point or that advanced. And I might eat my words in 40 years, but at least as of now, it's not that good. Thanks so much for coming on. This was an absolute blast.
Okay.
And I'll see you all in the virtual world in the next KaiyoCast episode. Bye. Bye.